So, all right, everyone, thanks for joining today's podcast. We're excited to be here with you. We got Lenny Gray, Door-to-Door Millionaire, man. This is an exciting opportunity for me and for those who've been following our channel here. We've had some different interviewers, but this has by far been my biggest one. So excited to have you, Lenny.
Awesome.
For those who are, I'll be posting. I usually just do the audio, but this one I'll be posting at least a video for anyone who likes to watch it. So for those who can see this, this is his new book. It's called More Door-to-Door Millionaire. Like, of course, you use the same brand. I love it. So you just add the more on there. I'm curious. Why did you name it More Door-to-Door Millionaire?
So that's a great question. When I wrote the first book, the only feedback I would get that wasn't like this is the greatest thing and we're so glad that somebody brought some transparency to the industry. I'd get a lot of feedback of like this is basic stuff. Like I know like top tier reps, kind of like we know that we've known this stuff forever.
Yeah.
And the subtitle on that is next level training. So what I wanted to do is kind of take that next step to go from door-to-door millionaire secrets of making the sale is foundational. That everybody needs to read that if you're even thinking about knocking on doors. But if you get good enough and you're consistent and this is something that you think, man, this could actually, I could make a career out of this or do this for a few summers, you need to get more, right? Like the idea is just to get more training that kind of takes reps to that basic level to that next level. So, and I'm just not super creative, honestly. So somebody said, I think I was on a podcast before and I was talking about writing another book. It was kind of during COVID when I just had the extra time to write. And they said, oh, so you're doing like more door to door. And I was like, oh, that actually, that might be a good title for the next book.
Clicked.
So that's kind of how it came about. Yeah. So
And that's how it stuck. So more door-to-door. Let's stick on this for a second. So for anyone who doesn't know who Lenny Gray is known, I would say, especially because of this book, The Door-to-Door Millionaire. He's obviously been in the industry for how long? You been in the industry for? I should say
since 98, so like 26 years or so, just crazy. Yeah.
98 of you knocking doors. I don't know if you've knocked this entire time or if you've maybe taken some breaks and not knocked, but like how of that time, how much time did you say you've been like on the doors?
So this is what's crazy is even next week I'm going out for a blitz with a company that is experimenting with a new product and service, and so I'm going out next week. I'll be knocking doors all next week. I knock every year to a certain extent, whether most of the time it's not me personally selling for myself, of course. What my thing is I love to train reps and I love to make reps better and see them improve, and so most of my door-to-door stuff. Which again, I'm knocking regularly. That's what I love about this industry is that you can be relevant no matter your age or how long you've been doing it. It's like, those old guys that golf and they're still on the tour and they're golfing and they're like in their 70s and they got to tee off from a little bit closer because they don't have the strength maybe. Like I feel like door to door is like that. Like you can literally, as long as you have a voice and you can get around, you can knock on doors and make great money as old as you are.
I feel like that's a unique like perspective personally, because in my experience so far, like you're not normal. Like most people your age, like 40s, like you're not too many 40-year-olds out knocking doors who have that mindset like, dude, I can do this for who knows how long till I die, that kind of mindset. A lot of people talk about how they're trying to get out of the doors. They're trying to do this for X number of summers. And that's kind of, I wanted to get into that a little bit because this was my mindset for so long of this is my last summer, this is my last summer till I'm moving on to this. So I'm just curious, you've been in this industry 26 years, you've got way more experience than pretty much anyone that's been doing this. Have you had those moments when you're like, man, this is my last summer and I'm done, and has this happened multiple times, or have you like hit a point where you're just like, it doesn't even phase, you're like, I'm all in?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the funny thing is after every summer, so my first few summers, it was when I was just in college and, summer job and that type of thing, got talked into it by one of my high school buddies. And after the first summer on the drive home, like I'm driving home in my Nissan Altima with my wife and, pretty much everything we owned at the time, driving across country back home.
Right.
And I remember telling her, I'm like, never let me do that again. That was the worst. And I did great. I sold about 500 accounts my first summer, made like 50 grand back in the day. And I was like, holy cow. But even still, I'm like just mentally exhausted, physically, emotionally, like everything's just like, don't let me do that again. And I kid you not, like 2, 3 months later, Okay, yeah, we'll go to do it again, right? You get that back end check or whatever it
Yeah.
was. And year two, same thing. We're driving home. Never let I never want to do that again. There's no way.
Yeah.
Year three, I'm saying, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And I still feel like that, right? You get on the doors and there's that nervousness. I don't That never goes away, and you want to perform, you want to do your best, but yeah, I've always had that thought like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But you get out there and you start talking to people, and it's such a unique job, and you get to meet different folks from different backgrounds and have good conversations. And I love 180 in people where they're totally anti you and salespeople, and next thing you know, you're signing
Right.
them up, and they're just like, and it's like performing miracles every day on the doors. And so
Right.
it's fun still.
Every day you start at zero, and somehow you just know by the end of the day, at least the good reps know by the end of the day they're going to hit, at least this many number of accounts. Like you
Yep.
can go out every day, no matter what neighborhood market you get sent to, and you're gonna at minimum sell like at least one, and
Yeah.
for sure should be selling more for your level. So that that's good to hear that you've had those experiences. For me, I know my first 4 summers, every door, every year was my last year. Like I told myself
Yep.
same thing. Don't let me do this again to my wife or even to myself. I was like, I refuse to go back to do this. And I didn't have nearly as good of the first summer as you did, which we'll talk about in a second. I want to hear more about that. But it's for me, what happened was I left door to door for I graduated, got my degree, and I got a job working in I graduated in like information systems, so like IT related stuff. And so I was getting working in IT. I was on a development team and we were working in this office. It was super like fun, kind of like those tech companies where you get like ping pong and all the food and just everything you want. It's super low key. You don't have to dress up. You're just everyone meets around in these like huddles and chats and talks and works at the same time. It's really, really low key. And at the end of 6 months, like I was hating it. Not because it was boring, not because it was like hard, but because I was bored. I could see my potential and my opportunities just flying past me, all my dreams, the money that I was losing by not knocking. And so I worked 6 months there, and then I had this complete switch where I realized that door to door is actually really awesome. It's a really cool opportunity. And ever since then, I've actually just loved door to door sales. I just think it's amazing. Not that I am like always excited to go knock doors, at the beginning of the day, but I'm so grateful for it that I know the alternative is not better, at least for me. So I was just curious if you'd had anything similar to that with your experience, like you were like trying to get your degree, then move on to better things. I know when I started your book and you mentioned that when you wrote your last book, that was like the end for you. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, I'll let you talk. Like, what changed? What happened there?
Yeah, so I went to school. I was into communications, so broadcast communications. I was going to be a TV news guy, and that was kind of the plan. And not until you get like a year out from earning your degree do they tell you, hey, you can make 35,000 in a year and work weekends and holidays. It's going to be fantastic, and you're going to
Yeah.
work in, you know, Billings, Montana, or whatever, right? Like just
Yep.
all of a sudden the reality of it came to me, and I went, man, I made more in 4 months than I'm going to make in a whole year, and I'm working, a quarter of the year to do it to boot. So, I think when I kind of grew up and was going to be graduating college, I knew that wow, there's maybe not a lot of opportunity for me to pursue what I wanted to do with my degree,
Hmm.
and maybe I should give this a go. And I got hired on as the VP of sales at Eclipse Marketing, where I started, who did the selling for Orc and pest control back in the day, and I kind of saw that personal growth and development that door to door was doing for me, from just being productive, being really good at it, being able to teach other people how to be really good at it, to
Hmm.
systemize things, to build frameworks. Like I did all the training program for Orkin essentially. I built it. I did video series. We did a manual. So we kind of built everything for Orkin, and and I saw it take off on a national scale, at Eclipse. And so for me it was always kind of that mindset of, yeah, there's other things out there, but the grass isn't going to be greener. Like, I'm really good at this. I think I have something to add. Like, it helps me personally as an individual to again see my potential, where I'm going, what I'm capable of. But then just watching other people grow, that I'm able to teach and teach my systems and process to that to me is the value of it all. I mean, I'll share one
Yeah.
quick story. So when we started our own company, so back in 2003, we started our first pest control company, and we were recruiting some people that we knew. On one recruiting trip, we went and recruited a guy. He was living in a trailer, not in a van down by the river, but in a trailer.
Hmm.
And we knock on his trailer door on it was a Saturday morning, and he and his wife are in the trailer, and they're kind of getting up out of bed, and my business partner and I go to recruit him to say, hey, you should come sell for us, this, that, and the other. Well, he turns out he's a decent rep, and he proves himself. And so he starts another one of our branches when we were in Omaha, Nebraska. And so he goes out there, builds this 7-figure branch with us, and we ended up, selling that off. But then here's this guy, fast forward, 6, 7 years later, married. Now he's got kids, and he's living in this nice house in Omaha,
Hmm.
and kids are running around. And it was like, I was a little part of that, a little part, not a big
Yeah.
part. It was
Right.
just really cool to see this guy living in a trailer, just barely being able to afford the propane to heat the thing, to now living very comfortably, and that's the cool part to me.
So what about so talk to the rep who's right now struggling with, the summer's about to start and, they've told themselves, they weren't going to do this again and they're going to do it again. Or this is your first summer ever doing this and you've heard all the horror stories of like how hard it's going to be. Like, what do you tell that rep to look forward to?
Well, what I would tell them is yeah, the reality of it is that this job is difficult, and it is probably one of the more difficult things you're going to do. But it's risk reward, right? Like, yeah, you could go sit in an office, or you could, be a tech guy, or do different things, whatever your talents or skill level is, and that's great.
Hmm.
And maybe that's a little bit more of a comfortable lifestyle. This is not a comfortable lifestyle. It's not in the sense that you have to prove yourself. You have to be dialed in every day, every door, every contact. Like, you really have to be prepared to give your best effort at every opportunity that you have to make a sale. And so for me, what's awesome now, back in the day when I started, I was given a 10-page, little this thick of a manual, and they said, okay, this is your instruction manual, basically, learn this and you'll be good to go. And I had the thing memorized in a week, and I'm like, this is it? Like, there's
Yeah.
no way this is all I need to learn. Now there's so much information out there, not just my books, but there's other people that have written books, and there's YouTube channels, and there's social media. Like, there is so much information on door to door out there. Make sure you find the stuff that resonates with you, though, because one thing
Hmm.
I have found is that a lot of reps are just wired differently. Like, some really love like the hard closing, and they love the Grant Cardone lifestyle, and that style of how he is, and just
Yeah.
very aggressive. Like, that's not my style. Like, that's a fit for some people, and that's fantastic if that floats their boat. For me, I'm more of just kind of more of a casual guy, a soft closer. I like to read nonverbals and metaverbal, and I really try to dig in to see what that person's thinking on the other side of the door. And if that resonates with people, then great. And there's everything in between, right? There's a lot of different ways to do this and to do this well, but find who resonates with you the most. Because a lot of times I've found reps who try to be something they are not, and that's when everything goes up in flames, when they're trying to pretend to be something that really isn't at the root or the heart of what they and who they are.
Hmm.
It's not them, and then they come across as very fake and phony, and it just makes it really hard to generate trust with people if that's the case.
Totally. Dude, I love it. So I know recently you'd had I don't know if you want to call it a webinar or just an opportunity for people to just chat with you and ask you some questions. So when I hopped on there, you'd said a few things. So I want to talk about a couple things I'd heard on that. And one of them was you mentioned, I don't know which summer this was for you, but you had a summer where you had really low retention, like 1-2% retention on the summer, which for me is like insane. Like I've just accepted that 10 to 15% is just it's just normal. It's just to be expected. Like you go and do this job and 10 to 15% of your accounts are going to cancel. I would love to hear for me, how do you change that? Is it a mindset change or is it something that I need to do in my pitch, in the way I qualify people? Um, Curious, what do you think you're doing different than what a lot of these reps are doing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the summer I was referring to is my third summer. I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and I ended up selling 674 accounts that summer. And when
Hmm.
the final payout came, I got paid for 668 of those accounts. So I had six cancels. I still claim that,
Cancels.
yeah, six cancels
That's
out of,
even better than I remembered. So that's
okay.
ridiculous.
And I seem to think that probably those six people that canceled, half of them probably died. So, we got to give them that. But
Yeah.
no, I don't know the reason really. But for me, it was my first year. One of the worst feelings I had was when I'd go out and I'd bust it all day long, and maybe I sell four or five accounts or whatever. And then when I get back to the office or maybe the next morning, I found out I had cancels. And I just that just deflated me. It knocked the wind out of me. I hated it. A lot of them I started to figure out, okay, what's the similarities between these cancels? And a lot of times it would be these one-leggers, right? I'd sell the wife or I'd sell the husband and I wouldn't talk to the other one. So I've kind of developed some techniques to where I'm talking to both decision makers. I'm almost trying to let them, they have to almost tell me like, no, I make the decision on this. This is my decision. My husband or my wife, they don't have anything to do. This is my decision. Okay, then I'll proceed. You have to earn that from me. If not, I'm going to try to come back and talk to both of them because
Hmm.
I just hate the thought of losing somebody or giving that much time and effort to somebody who turns around and changes their mind. So that said, most people, if you're falling pre-service, pre-initial service cancels, if you're up in the 1 out of 10 range, 2 out of 10, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It means you're stretching people and that type of thing. But what I'm talking about is post service. So once
Yeah.
somebody's had that initial, you need to be well under 5% on that. So pre service cancels, post service cancels, two different metrics here that we're measuring. But for me, I didn't like the idea of anybody canceling. I knew I was going to stretch people and they'd cancel before they got the service. And that's okay if it falls within that 10 to 20%. But what I'm looking at is I want to sell solid accounts that, back when I
Once your
sold that, that,
service.
that number, yeah, I want them to be serviced. I don't want them just to stick around for a year. I want them to stick around for as long as they're in their house. Like I want to provide that kind of value. And
Hmm.
so I really bought into that, after my first year that I got to do better at just solidifying selling people long term. And then certainly that helped me as I've started my own pest control companies. Well, yeah, our retention with our reps, we feel like is really, really good post 1 year agreement as well because of how we train them and just trying to focus in on selling quality and not necessarily just quantity.
So I'm gonna just dig a little more, just because I want to get maybe a little more nitty gritty on like how to. So this is something I know would help me tremendously. And so anyone who's struggling with like retention, this is for you. Like, how do I know if is it the neighborhood I'm knocking? Is it, do you only knock a specific like median income? Do you you're saying you need to talk to both the spouses? Okay, so you make sure you talk to decision makers like together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there just certain times when you can just feel good knowing this one's going to go through versus times when you're just like, yeah, I don't think this one's going to go through, so I'm not going to sell them. Like, I'm sure you probably turn people down in a way. Like, you're like, I'm not going to sell you right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's the point, right? And then there's some certain things there, whether, I feel like, I mean, I've literally walked away from sales if I see in somebody's house that, yeah, they're interested, but maybe, inside the house is a train wreck or it doesn't look good. And maybe they've given me some little bit of clues. Like I really do, I think above average in terms of just listening to people when they talk to me. A
Hmm.
lot of reps, you get in that mindset. This is what I'm going to say next is somebody's talking to you. Like that's a tough one, but you got to stop doing that. Like for me, I think I write about it in one of the books where it's like it's stop, drop, and listen. Where if somebody actually is giving you information, and it could be no information that's going to draw you any closer to the sale. Maybe they say, "Oh yeah, tomorrow we'd love to do it, but my daughter has a soccer game or whatever." Well, I'm
Hmm.
going to ask a couple questions about the daughter and soccer, right? Just because I'm trying to be personal, I'm trying to build trust with somebody. But sometimes people give you clues as far as maybe it's starting a new job or we're struggling to pay the bills or whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to really push somebody that I don't think is going to be around that I'm going to get paid for. I just don't think it's worth my time. It's
Yeah.
really not of value to me because time is the most precious thing that I have on the doors because we only have so much daylight every day. And
Sure.
once it's too dark to knock or I'm done with all my callback appointments or whatever, then it's kind of off to the next day. And like you said, we start from zero and we have no momentum anymore. And we got to pick it up, where we left off, or we try to the best we can. So I'm trying to maximize every contact throughout every day as well.
Okay. Are you like following up with these people to like help keep them in check, or they just like you sell them so good when you leave that door, you just you know that they're gonna be taken care of,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel. And again, I'll have one or two out of 10 that'll cancel before they get their first service. Maybe they have
right?
buyer's remorse and they think about it and they're like, maybe we shouldn't. That guy stretched us a little more. Yeah, actually, that's fine. Like as long as it falls in that range, that's fine. Now, if I've got reps that are, 50% of people they're scheduling pre-service are canceling, well, now
Hmm.
we've got to address where there's a kink in the hose there, and that's probably on their solidifying the sale checklist, right? There's
Right.
probably some things they're not doing and they're kind of skirting by some things, and then people go, wait a minute, now we don't want to do this. Like I've been around the block a few times here, and I get
No,
what
I
reps
know.
try to say because reps go, well, I'm going to get paid out in full at month 6 or 8 or 10, so I really just have to talk people. You don't have to go that route. Like 100%, you don't have to go that route.
Yeah.
And if you believe you have to go that route, you've been deceived because you can be straight up with people and say, hey, just try our starter program. It's for a year and a half, 2 years, whatever kind of agreement you're on.
Hmm.
Just try us out. Let us prove to ourselves what we're going to be able to do for you. And then after that, you can kind of decide what you want to do. But quite frankly, most people are going to stay with us because they're going to see the value in the service that we're offering. And if you're kind of giving people more of that long-term vision that, oh yeah, these guys really want to earn my business long-term versus,
Hmm.
hey, I know it's a year agreement. Just try it for 4 or 5 months. Just, if you want to cancel at that point, that's totally like, that's bogus. Like it's
Yeah.
not being truthful to your employer. It's not being truthful to the person that's ultimately going to be paying you. I'm not a fan of those type of tactics. Just sell it long term, and I think that leads a lot to that long term retention and getting paid for the accounts that you're putting in the time and effort to sell in the first place.
Right. Cool. All right. Love it. You mentioned this earlier, but I wanted to kind of talk about your first summer, and I want to talk about your best summer. And I think I know what your best summer was, but I'll let you share about it. So you said your first summer you sold like 500 accounts. Is that right?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
like in the 460s or 470s.
Okay.
I don't quite remember. I had a goal of 442. That was like the goal that
A
I had written.
442 summer. That's yeah, just a random number, but cool.
That is 42 is my favorite number
All
anyway.
right.
So I was like, oh, I'll do 442, and it was more like I wanted to make this much money if I'm going to go out and do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I never remember like or never forget when we had to write this do or die goal down. They called it a do or die goal, and we were in this big Super Saturday training, and we had to write this number down, and then we had to turn it into these guys in suits that looked professional, probably VPs of whatever. I didn't really care.
Okay.
I didn't know anybody, so I'm like, and I remember handing it to this guy, and he looked at the number and he's like, wait, you're a rookie? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, nobody's ever done 442 sales as a rookie. And I said, okay. And he says, so what makes you think you're gonna hit this number? And I had already figured out for the weeks that I had committed to selling, I knew I would have to do this many each month, this many each week, this many each day. And I kind of broke it down for him. Well, I just need to do this, and this. And he was like, not super impressed. He was just like, well, good luck.
Yeah.
And that was
Like
kind of it.
just like I've heard
Yeah,
this
like
before.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I've heard this
Yeah.
story before.
Uh-huh.
Somebody's a rookie's going to go sell 400 plus.
So then
Uh,
what happened? So everyone's had the story. Most of the time it's the opposite. They come in like I'm gonna sell 400 accounts and then they go home with 100, you know? Like
yeah.
why did you hit your goal your first summer versus why some reps probably don't hit it? Like what did you do different?
Yeah, it's the talk, and the walk, right? Like one thing I knew is what I could control, and I could control how many hours I was out knocking, how many people I spoke to. I could control those things. So literally, we had I think it was an 11 o'clock meeting, training meeting every morning, Monday through
Hmm.
Friday, and I'd go out before the training meeting to go talk to 5 people. That was my goal. I didn't necessarily want to sell anybody in the morning. I mean, it's 9, 10 in the morning, whatever. But I was like, if I can just talk to more people, I can get better at this with more repetition, like anything, right?
Yeah.
This is like life lessons, right? You get better, you put in time, you're going to get better at whatever you're practicing and putting in that effort into. So I'd just go out, I'd talk to 5 people, I'd head to the training meeting. And over time, those 5 people every week, 5 days a week, well, that's 25 more people. And you'd think, well, that's not a big deal. Well, in a month, that's 100 more people. In 2 months,
Hmm.
it's 200 more people. And all of a sudden, it's like I'm talking to hundreds of more people than anybody else in my office. So I'm going to get better anyways. And I wasn't even the top dog in my office. We had a bunch of experienced reps that summer in Birmingham, bunch of experienced reps. So I was getting like the
Great.
scraps as far as area. Like I didn't know what I didn't know. So I was like, all right, I'll just knock in this area and do the best that I can do. But for me, I just learned to control what I could control, and I could control my work ethic. And then before long, then I actually started to sell accounts in the morning before training meeting. And it didn't turn into, walking into the training meeting with the guys saying, hey, how many people did you go talk to? But it was more like, did you sell anything? And then how many did you
How
sell? Like
many?
people
Yeah.
knew, like it was just a matter of time because of my effort that I was out to do that. So I'd highly encourage, any rep out there that's just like a little nervous like I was, and I don't know if I'm going to be good at it. Well, you know what? We don't know either, but you might as well, just go down swinging and talk to as many people as you can, because that's really the only way you're going to find out if you're any good at this.
So like the key takeaway I had from that is you have to be able to control what you can control. And the one thing you can control is how many people you talk to, how many at least doors you knock.
Sure.
That's something you can control, right? Would you say there's
100%.
anything else that's something like you controlled that made it so you hit your goal? Or is
So,
that the main thing?
yeah, no, well, that's certainly the main thing, but short-term memory, right? It's being in a position where I could talk to somebody and they could tell me that I'm ugly and that my mom should have never had me, or whatever kind of insult they want to fling my way.
Hmm.
And I could choose to carry that to the next door and be a little grumpy or upset about that. Or I could just dust it off my shoulder and go to the next door and give 110% or 100% with my pitch and my energy and my effort. So
Yeah.
not just out there working, but staying in the game mentally. So I'm focused on just that one person, not caring if, I'm trying to carry positive momentum with me, certainly, but any kind of negative momentum, I just don't carry that with me from door to door. It just doesn't matter.
One thing you did say, just I kind of was thinking about, is you said you were on a team that you had a lot of like big hitters. Like you weren't even the best rep on your team that summer.
Oh
Like
no.
for a lot of guys, 442 accounts would have been, or you sold more than that. Like that would have been the number one person on their team. And this was back in the early 90s. This is actually like, to me, like 400 back then is the equivalent of like 800 today, like in my
It's
perspective.
because of the good training and the good books out there
Yeah,
nowadays, I think
exactly. It's
is why.
because of the books like D2D Millionaire out there that helps us. But so that's kind of the equivalent that I would see that as. So you had guys who were doing above this. Do you think some of this, the reason you did so well is because of the team you were on and that environment you were in? Or was it just mostly like you were the reason that happened?
Yeah, I mean, I get the value of, high tides raise all ships, and I believe in that. I would have done what I did because I'm the type of person where if I set my mind to something, if I say this is what when I wrote that number and I said I'm gonna do 442, like I knew there was no question I was doing 442 accounts. Like you'd
Hmm.
have had to, ship me out of there, in the trunk of a car, not to hit that number. So, and that's just how I'm wired. So I wouldn't care if I was the only rep in the office that summer, or if we had, a pretty large group that summer of a bunch of heavy hitters, a bunch of guys that did really, really well. It wouldn't have mattered to me personally.
Okay, cool. I like to hear that. So I know for a lot of people, like environment, like they talk about how that's important. I know for me, it's important to be like
Yeah.
in an environment that helps me a ton. Um, I guess I'm not quite as strong-willed as you are because man, like I know with me, like environment can bring me down. And so if you can like be that mindset like driven, that's why you are who you are. Like you're able to produce at high levels and help people and like be that motivator who knows like I don't need you guys to like have these, things in line. Like I can bring the heat, I can bring the excitement, I can bring all the energy you need to make this happen. So
Well, it's, it goes, I mean, people are wired differently. Like I never missed a day of school in my life. Like kindergarten through college, I never missed a class. Never missed a day of school. I was actually on the news twice, for having
that's
this perfect
crazy.
attendance record. And so I think part of me was just, that's kind of how I was brought up. Like I just battle and I just go for it, and that's just how I'm wired. Not everybody's wired like that, and you like that camaraderie and the fraternity, and that's awesome. Like I said, I'm not
Hmm.
opposed to that, and I love that. We had a good group, but at the end of the day, I'm me, and I'm going to do me, and whatever anybody else is going to do, it's not gonna drag me down, certainly. And if it lifts me up, that's great. If it doesn't, that's fine. I can pull all that within and be
Cool.
just fine.
Cool. Do you think just like you were married, right? Do you
Yep.
think being married was like helpful for you that summer, or like was that part of the reason? Or if you hadn't been married, do you think that wouldn't have had any effect?
Uh, well, I'll say this first and foremost for the reps that are married out there, a big shout out to the spouses who like get it. right? And I
Hmm.
know there's spouses that don't get it, and
Yep.
they're calling their rep and their husband or wife or whatever, and they're bothering them during prime time and different things like that. I know everybody has challenges and that, but props to the spouses who could just 100% support, their spouse going out and knocking doors, because it is tough. And I'm fortunate. I have a wife who's just very low key and just chill, and she could do her own thing. I mean, I was out of town early this week speaking at a conference, and I came home and I was like, did you know I was gone for the last couple of days? Like, it's just funny, right? Like, she
Yep.
could just do her own thing and it doesn't really matter. So I was fortunate in that regard, to where it's like, okay, if anything to do with emergency or hospital or whatever, let me know. If not, I'm gonna do what I do. And yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I think being married just specifically to her was helpful.
Yeah.
But if I was married or not, I just think I just go when I have my mind set on something. I just go, I just do it, and we would have hit 442 being married or not. I'm glad I was married though.
Cool. Cool. I was just curious if that helped. So then I want to talk about your best summer, and then I want to talk about so like a personal goal of mine. So my goal is to hit like probably Golden Door and like the standards there.
Sure.
So you tell us what your best summer was and kind of some like the details behind how you hit it. And then the idea for me is I want to get tips on how to hit Golden Door, like from you. Like what does it take to be a Golden Door winner? Like and get as nitty as you want to on this. So best summer, what made you hit that goal? And then some tips to hitting Golden Door for those who are interested in doing that.
Yeah, no, great. So my best summer was when we started our own company. So I started with a business partner who was doing franchises. He was opening up franchises for Orkin pest control. So he had a franchise in Albuquerque. He was opening up one in Kansas City and St. Louis. Like, he's a rock star. Like, he got day to day operations. We were talking beforehand. It's like, that's not
Yep.
stuff that I like to do either. It's like, I
Yeah.
just like to go sell. And so he was going to take care of everything else, right? I sell and he sprays and does all the customer service, and before we started hiring it, support staff and that type of thing.
Hmm.
So my deal was, I'd always had this vision. Again, my third summer, I did about close to 700. And then fourth and fifth summers, I'd go do blitzes like a couple weeks on my own, just test market different areas they wanted to go to. But I'd be training most of the summer. So I'd be flying out all over the country and knocking doors with reps. So I didn't really have a chance to dial in. But of course, I always wanted to hit 1,000. Like, that was kind of the thing. It was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
dude, 1,000 accounts. Nobody had ever done that back in the early 2000s. So it's like, that'd be cool. So that was kind of the goal. And then I wanted to kick off our company to have enough revenue to where we could afford to pay good money to a door-to-door team the next year.
Hmm.
So in 2003, the goal was 1,042 accounts, of course, to go do that. And I probably started knocking. I think I was about 5.5 months knocking. And quite frankly, at about month 4, my business partner was like, "Bro, I can't keep up with you anymore. My marriage is going to be struggling if I don't spend the weekends with my wife. Can you please take Fridays off so you don't have anything for me on Saturday?"
Yeah.
So I actually was only busting out 5 days a week for about half of that. But
That's
about
crazy.
5.5 months later, I was at about 1,200 accounts is where I ended up. I was around a little over $500,000 in revenue, which I know now you go, wow, $500 contract value. That's,
No, but this is
480,
this
490.
is over 20 years ago,
This is
guys.
22 years ago. So
Yeah, this is totally different.
inflation happened. There's some different things that happened. So a little bit of a different time. But yeah, so that was the goal. And honestly, that was my livelihood, right? Like, I had dropped a great job, as a VP of sales there at Eclipse, and making good guaranteed money. And I basically, each of us put in like 5 grand or something, again, 20 something years ago, to buy a truck and some equipment and
Sure.
product and that kind of thing. And then literally it was like, this is my life. And I'll never forget, that first day knocking for my own company. And it was, I knocked, it's like fairy tale, but the first guy I talked to, I sold him, and I was like, whew, it was
Yeah.
like, exhale, this is going to work in Utah. I'd never knocked in Utah. There was a lot of
Yeah.
people knocking in Utah back in the day. There was some companies, but it was tough. Utah's got its challenges for some reasons that people that are here know.
Hmm.
Um, but I think first day I ended up selling 4 accounts, I want to say. And I mean, I had so many people like, just wanting to talk to me. And my wife, obviously, she'd text me every now and again and just be like, "Are you selling? How's it going?" And it was
Yep.
just the best feeling in the world to know, okay, we're going to be fine here. And so, yeah, it was just like 6 days a week for most of the time, 6 days a week. 8, 9, 10 hours a day, whatever it was. I was just like, I got to fill up the route for tomorrow. That is my goal. And
Yep.
my business partner was busting out 10 to 12 a day. So it's like, that's what I got to do. And I would just sell until dark and fill those routes up. And then we'd start over the next day. And it was fun. It was
That's fun.
super challenging, but it was a good time.
That's a cool story. So did it yourself? It's just you two.
Yeah, until I sold enough where we had to get a reg tech, and
Hmm.
then with a reg tech or two that were going out, then we had to hire. We actually hired my wife's cousin to come in and be kind of our secretary to answer phones and that kind of stuff. We just got too busy to not be able to do that all
Right.
on our own, so we just started to hire out as we needed to.
Right. No,
So.
that's how it works. So
Yeah,
you were getting
yeah,
bigger.
no. Ran it out of my basement. Actually, the same basement. I'm doing this. I have a home office just down in the basement. It's the same place where we started our pest control company with
No way.
the Costco fold out tables and the Costco chairs, and yeah, we were just doing that right. 20 feet from where I'm at. That's
So
kind of how it
simple. I
started.
love it.
Yeah,
And so
it was
do you hear
easy.
that, guys? For anyone who's like thinking that you have to have all this set up, you look at Lenny, you look at what he's accomplished. He's obviously well-to-do, and he's also pretty simple, I can tell. Just really focused on the most important things, which is hard work, um, filling up the routes, and not stopping until the job is done. Right? I feel like
Yeah,
that's just kind of your mindset. It's like I have a job, I'm going to finish my job, and I'm not quitting till it's over. And there's not really an excuse to not do what I'm supposed to do. Like they rely on me. You probably felt a little bit of responsibility too. It's your company. You're not only responsible for your family, but for your business partner, for the technicians who are relying on you to take care of them. Like there's probably all that responsibility. And so for you, it's just like, yeah, I have to sell this in order to make this make sense. So
yeah. And
like,
and I'll tell you, over the years and training tens of thousands of reps in different different venues and different aspects, I will tell you that if you're a blamer, you're not going to do well at door to door. Because I've been around enough blamers that blame the area, they blame their team lead, they blame their team, they blame everything or everybody, everything but themselves.
mhm.
That's going to be a problem. You're not going to be successful. I promise you. Look for something else to do. Now, if you're a builder rather than a blamer, and you try to build yourself and learn from everything and realize that, hey, I can control that or I can do better at this. Like my thing when I was first knocking, it was always in between the doors, what's happening in between my ears. I would always, I know where a rep's dialed in or not, even if I watch them. If I'm going out to shadow with a rep and I'll kind of maybe park my car down the street and watch them, if in between every door, if they're not just on their canvassing app, maybe dropping a pin and then hustling to the next door, but I can tell they're swiping and sliding and they're on social media or something, I know that rep's not dialed in mentally. They're
Yeah.
not going to be performing at their peak. The reps that are dialed in and they don't blame other people, but they take blame themselves when things don't go well, that's the type of rep that's going to succeed, because you're going to look for ways to improve after every experience, knocking doors and talking to people. And that's the type of rep you want to be around in your office, and the type of rep you want to be, because you're working on building rather than blaming.
Cool. Let's get some tips for anyone who's wanting to do Golden Door. So you hit Golden Door, obviously. So for those who don't,
You'll have to refresh. I don't follow a lot of that. I know
you're
a lot
good.
of
So
people that
1,000
hit it. What
accounts,
is it?
or for
Okay.
this summer, it's 650K in rev.
Okay.
So that's kind of the standard. That hasn't really changed, like the number, because most people don't even hit 1,000 accounts. Now it's easier to hit revenue than it is to get to the 1,000. So you hit what I would consider like the harder of the two to get to. So you've hit that number 20 years ago. So how did you achieve your version of, Golden Door, and how could somebody, like, what would I need to do? Like, what would you tell me if someone's like, dude, I want to sell 1,000 accounts. What do I need to do?
Well, some of the things we've talked about, and I don't want to rehash that. I want to talk about some other things that I think are
Yeah, like
super.
maybe more like this is kind of like higher level, I would say. Kind of
Yeah.
like what were some of the higher level things that you were doing, as a 1,000 account rep versus like a 500 account rep?
So, the effort has to be there, the hours have to be there. I mean, at the end of the day, when you get to that level and you're thinking, you're a legitimate person to win that award, like you have to be to the point of your life where you're willing to do what maybe you weren't willing to do when you were, maybe comfortably earning six figures or whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
it's kind of almost like a outer body experience when you go for something like that at that level. And it starts with being so perfected in your pitch and every aspect, right? That's one of the things I train is I call it my sales flow process, and it's a 6-step approach. And there's, bullet points in between each step of that approach that you have to
Mhm.
learn, right? You have the initial approach. There's 5 steps to an effective initial approach. You have to qualify people to know who to talk to, who not to talk to. There's 3 main qualifiers that I go through. You're overcoming concerns. There's 7 common concerns that you're going to hear on the doors typically. Once you overcome concerns, you got to learn how to close. You got to learn how to value build. You got to learn how to, solidify the sale. Like all of these steps, there's sub steps within those. You have to be so perfect at knowing all of those steps and how to address every little thing that nothing phases you. Now you're going to get the one off and the crazy person that makes some comment and you're like, I've never heard that before. And that's super crazy. That's
Yeah.
okay. Like we just, those go by the wayside anyways. But the reality is you've got to have so much confidence in yourself that it doesn't matter what that person says on the other side of the door. You're going to have a very reasonable and a very persuasive way to make sure that person knows that you care about them and you're going to make that sell, one way or the other. Because at the end of the day, you have to increase your closing ratios, right? Like I measure for my guys and the way I teach it, it's we got to talk to 7 people an hour on the doors. We've got to have a qualifying ratio where one of those 3 qualifiers are reached about half the time
Hmm.
of those 7. I know these aren't exact numbers because we obviously take it over the course of a day and a week and a month and a summer. And then after that qualifying ratio, you got to figure out how many people you qualify that are worth talking to. How many of those do you sell? So your sales ratio. And then you got to figure out a cancel ratio. So you can kind of back into doing the math. You kind of have to know that, right? Going back to my first year, I knew exactly what I needed to sell every day, every hour. Like I had it dialed in. I knew. And if you don't know what it's going to take to hit that number to get that award, then you're kind of on a train without a map, or in
Yeah.
your car and you're not exactly sure. So you have to have a map. You have to be dialed in. You have to be willing to do maybe what you haven't done before. Sometimes that's knocking in weather even. I mean that can be one of those things that people are like, well, it's kind of raining or maybe it's a little cold. And in the back of my car I had a raincoat. In the back of my car I had an umbrella. In the back of my car I had 2 pairs of socks because I hate knocking it with wet socks. That's my biggest pet peeve about knocking on doors. So
Yeah.
I'd have 2 extra pair of socks, extra contracts because we weren't digital back in the day. So everything that I needed, like nothing would really get me off the doors. I mean, I write about in my first book, knocking in a tornado warnings in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like that's how stupid I was, I guess. But
Yeah.
if there's imminent danger, then you certainly want to hunker down and whatever. But or if it's like a complete downpour. But I've knocked in snow in Denver, in May, and there's a lot of stories where it's like the weather can certainly, it's probably a factor of about 10% of your summer. But if you think about 10% of your summer, if you can perform even at close, maybe even half your expectation because of the weather and other circumstances, like those little things add up over that course of 4.5, 5.5 months, however long you're out there doing it. So it's
Cool.
really measuring the little things and being really good at those.
Cool. I like it. Thank you. Um, well, we've talked for a minute, so I don't want to take all your time. Um, I've listened to a couple different of your I watched some of your YouTube videos and some of your different things. I think we can end on this. And if you wanted to share something from your new book, love to hear something like if there's maybe your favorite chapter or your favorite portion of the book that you wanted to share. I'd love to hear that too. But we could share that. But the one video I've watched, and I like this, probably my favorite video that you've made. You called it the proven formula to D2D success. And inside of it, you talk about hard work and measuring hard work between 2 different people, like the farm boy versus the city boy. And what does it mean to be a hard worker? Because it's a vague term that's
Yeah.
hard to really concrete what that means for us. And so you've kind of helped us a little bit, you given us some ratios that you use to show whether I'm a hard worker or not. But can you just talk real quick, just kind of share that little example of what it means to be a hard worker and sometimes how it's hard to explain it, and then what your version of hard work would be.
Yeah. Hard work. I mean, that's one of our values of victory. We had 3 values of victory when we started our company, and hard work, mental toughness, and commitment. That was kind of what we built our company on. And hard work is like you said, it's very subjective, right? I could interview 100 people and every single one of them, if I'm interviewing for the job to be door to door, and if I say, give me some of your top qualities that you'd bring to the table to be successful at this, I bet 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100 people would say, I'm a hard worker. And I
Hmm.
never just settled for that because of the subjectivity of the statement. So I'd
Yeah.
always say, what does that mean to you? What does hard work mean to you? And that's when you really get to that nitty gritty of, well, what does it mean to be a hard worker? Sometimes people would have to take a step back because they've never been asked a follow-up question to that. They're just like,
Yeah.
well, I'm a hard worker. Well, it's great. What does that mean to you? And it is different, for somebody that was raised on a farm and maybe is up at 4 a.m. moving pipe and everything else. And to some city kid who maybe, had to take out the trash once a day or something. And that seemed very hard. I don't know. So it's very subjective. This is a job where you can't cheat it. You can't cheat door-to-door sales. I will tell you that. The proof is in the pudding, and it always will be. It's in the numbers. It's how many people you're talking to, and then you have that framework built to where you're progressing people along that path to the sale at a rate that will help you to get the amount of sales, the amount of closes that you need to get. So you just can't cheat door-to-door sales. So if you're a hard worker, yes, that is foundational to all of this. Something, as we talked about before, that you 100% can control as well. So yeah, the hard work piece. I mean, things that I do are really just the things that we talk. It's just putting time on the doors. It's measuring
Yeah.
my hourly, right? Am I talking to 7 people an hour? The only excuse I would have for not talking to 7 people an hour, maybe I sold 3 people that hour. Well, it's hard to talk to 7 people if each
Yeah.
sale is taking you 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, you have
Fill
an
out the
excuse.
contract.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an excuse.
No problem.
Otherwise, you better be talking to 7 people an hour. I mean, I talk about this in the second book. You talk about my second book. I don't know if it's my favorite chapter, but probably my favorite chapters is it's a little bit more motivation like that. You know from talking to me now, it's not like I need to be super motivated, but I got
Yeah.
a lot of people saying I need more motivation. You need to motivate me. So I threw some motivation stuff in. I think it's a fun chapter. It's towards the end of the book. But one of the things that I do is earlier in the book I talk about something I call my 3-door rule, where if I knock on 3 doors and nobody answers, like I will jog or walk really quickly to a block if I see somebody out working in their yard or the garage doors open. Like I do not make money if I don't talk to people. And if I'm just knocking on empty doors, that's why I don't measure that in my company or even for myself when I'm knocking. I don't care how many doors I knock on, nobody answers. That's irrelevant to me.
Hmm.
It's how many people am I actually talking to. So my 3-door rule is basically like it keeps you mentally focused, it keeps you in the game, and it doesn't, because we all know door to door can really suck if you're out there knocking doors and not talking to anybody, and
Yeah.
it's lonely, and it's like you get in your head and you start having these regrets and just second thoughts about doing this. Well, if you're talking to people, it's way more enjoyable. It's fun. It's you're learning and you're interacting with other human beings. Like that's the cool part. So to me, I just think, yeah, just in terms of just putting in the time, and not just putting in the time and checking a box, but putting in the most valued time that you can put in on the doors.
Like
So
door, like face-to-face time. Like your quality is like, I'm here to face-to-face interaction. I'm not here to knock doors.
yeah,
I'm here to talk to people. And
yeah,
so
and
I
then
knock 3 doors.
learn from it. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I was just saying, you knock 3 doors, and if you haven't talked to 3 people, like you're gonna go find somebody who is like obviously home or like outside, and you're gonna go talk to that person.
Yeah, I
It's a
can't
great
stand it.
role.
The thought of 4 doors to me, and I don't know why I call it the 3-door rule and why the fourth door was it, but the thought of me knocking 3 doors and then knocking a fourth door and nobody answers is nauseating. It's
Yeah.
like, what am I doing here? Like, I
Yeah.
am not helping myself or anybody else by walking around knocking on doors, or I don't carry flyers on me or handouts or that, because I'm like, I'm not a flyer guy. That's
Yeah.
not my job. And then
No.
nobody's calling off these flyers anyway. We all know that.
No.
It's under 1% conversion on those. So
Yeah.
what am I doing? Like I need to be talking to. That's where I'm at my best, is when I'm talking to people.
I love it. I've told this to a lot of people, but for me, like I don't mind people telling me no. As a matter of fact, I'm grateful for it, because then it lets me know, like, I don't need to go waste my time with this person.
Yep.
What I can't stand, my least favorite part of this job, is no answers. Like, it just drives me insane, because it drains you, like, mentally. It takes you out of your groove. And then when you like finally talk to that person, sometimes it like catches you off guard, because like the last 5, 10 doors didn't even open. So then you're like, that pitch is totally crap, and you
Yep.
could have sold that person if you had been in your groove. So I love that. I love this rule. No one's ever talked about it. See, these are like the little things, you guys, that you want to hear, like, from other people, because it's simple, but it's a unique perspective. It's like, dude, I'm here to talk to people. If I've knocked 3 doors, no one answers, I'm finding a person. I will, you know, if in your case, you're going to be running. for a lot of guys like me, I use a segue. I'm just gonna cruise on to the next like obvious person, and I'm gonna go find that person and talk to him. So that way I'm not falling into a funk of not pitching.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I mean, we all
love
know, like I take Sundays off, right? That's just my day to take off. And man, when I start Monday morning, I don't care if it's my third year, my fifth year, my 12th year. If I'm knocking consistently throughout the week and then I take a day off and start Monday morning, I feel like, have I ever done this? Like I am so choppy and so out of my funk. It takes me a few, right, to
it.
get
Yep.
going. So that can if that's happening consistently throughout a day, let
Yeah.
alone just the first part of your week, that's a problem. Yeah.
Mhm.
So three door rule, live by it, die by it.
Love it. Love it.
So,
Well, you're awesome. Thank you so much for taking this time with us and with me specifically. So you've been awesome, very gracious with your time. Anything, I guess next thing would be like, how do people reach out to you? You know, you're really, really gracious with like your time and responding. Like I messaged you on Instagram and you just responded right away to me. Like super cool. Like, how do people reach out to you? Like best way to get in contact?
yeah, and I love that, Tyler, and I'm glad you brought that up because I am like I just feel like there's something I call the law of heaven, and you hear a lot of people talk about it. It's the more you give, the more you get, and I'm not talking about financially all the time either. Like if you just give of your time, like the more time it seems like you have, maybe you give compliments to people, right? And
Yeah.
maybe you're more complimented. I don't know, but there's this crazy law of heaven that it's reciprocated like that. So I'm all about giving back to this door-to-door community that's done so much for me and my family over the years that I love it. So I try to be as accessible as possible. Yeah, I do these free webinars that you alluded to. You go to d2dmillionaire.com/webinar. You can register for my free webinars. I give out tips and tricks. I think the next one we're going to dive into switchovers, if I remember right. I mean,
Mhm.
I love the idea of just the more people to strengthen the community as a whole is really it. Yeah, Instagram, the Lenny Gray. Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Just look up Lenny Gray, and you'll know me when you see me.
Cool.
I
Door to
think it's
door
the same
millionaire.
picture
That's
Door to
the
Door
easiest way to
Millionaire.
remember him.
Yeah,
So
get the books. Leave me a book review.
yeah,
If you got a
no,
minute, those are
definitely.
all
You
helpful.
said, I
So
remember in your thing, you said to take a picture with the book because photos do really good with you on Amazon. So
yep,
take a picture with the book, you guys go buy it, more door to door millionaire. And after you get it, take a picture, give them a 5-star review, and it's going to help. It's just a way of us giving and sharing in our community. So I
love it.
appreciate it. You're awesome, Lenny.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right, we'll take care.